More than 4 years after schools were gearing up to possibly return to in-person classes during the pandemic, Dr. Anthony Fauci admitted in a CBS News interview that closing schools for more than a year was a, quote, mistake, contradicting several previous statements he'd made in press interviews and in congressional testimony. Asked by CBS News's Tony Dokoupil while talking about his new memoir, On Call, A Doctor's Journey in Public Service, Dr. Fauci said keeping it for a year was not a good idea of the CDC imposed school closure mandates. So that was a mistake in retrospect, the CBS anchor asked for clarification. We will not repeat it. Absolutely, yeah, Fauci responded. During summer 2020, Fauci butted heads with former President Donald Trump over the issue, breaking with him over the CDC guidelines in a public way in July 2020. While Trump posted on Twitter that he was breaking with those guidelines, Fauci said during interviews to the press that some areas of the country had such high viral spread they should avoid returning to in-person classes. Asked in several interviews in August about the issue, he said the default position should be to return to classes, but that many would be kept for months or more away from classes and virtual options due to high community transmission. Once schools did open in September, however, less than 1% showed spread among teachers and students, according to a study that Brown University put out that year. In the following January, the CDC did its own study confirming that there was a low transmission rate in many schools. When Fauci was later asked about the decision to close schools, he said, "I don't want to use the word mistake," in a 2022 October interview with ABC News correspondent Jonathan Karl. He's often brushed off criticism, pointing to it as the CDC guidelines that he merely supported but did not enforce. "I had nothing to do with it," he told Carl, for instance, during that interview. But finally this year, before the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, Fauci admitted that there was no scientific backing to the social distancing guidelines that caused many of the schools to remain closed for 2020 and much of 2021. Asked about the 6 feet to slow the spread mandate, Fauci answered, "It just sort of appeared, I don't recall," saying that it was a decision made not based on data or even data that could be accomplished at the time. The U.S. Education Department later released statistics showing reading scores among 9-year-olds fell during the course of the pandemic to the lowest point in 30 years, and math scores fell for the first time in a half century.